Señor Presidente,
President, on behalf of the people and the government of Paraguay, I hope that your worthy presidency of this General Assembly will contribute to its success and the achievement of the United Nations aims. On behalf of the people and government of Paraguay, I would like to express to the people and government of Mexico our solidarity for the victims of the earthquake of yesterday, the epicenter of which was in the state of Morelos. And we would like to express our most sincere condolences to the families of the victims of this tragedy. After 4 years as head of the government of Paraguay, it's an honor for me to participate in this assembly with my spirit encouraged to contribute to the construction of a world order based on the principles of justice, peace, and solidarity among nations within a framework of human rights, institutionality, and the rule of law. We must persist in our efforts to strike a reasonable balance between the interests of all states and to build a world order of democracy and equity, developing relationships among sovereign independent states based on respect and trust, granting priority to peaceful coexistence in which the same opportunities can be provided among all nations. In order to do so, we require the efficient work of the United Nations and its bodies, especially the General Assembly and the Security Council. We would like a more democratic, transparent, and inclusive and representative Security Council, which reflects the diversity of the membership of the United Nations, as well as the current geopolitical realities. The United Nations continues to be the most important universal forum for dealing with global challenges, problems such as poverty, inequality, climate change, transnational organized crime, and drug trafficking, which undermines democratic institutions. Then terrorism, among others, should all be dealt with collectively. We urgently request all stakeholders to focus our efforts and resources on responding to these shared and urgent challenges faced by humanity. The Republic of Paraguay reaffirms its firm commitment to the implementation of the precepts of the Paris Accord, which we have signed, and encourages states, especially those who have the greatest responsibility in the production of greenhouse gases, to take all necessary measures to save our planet from the impact of global warming. In Paraguay, we have a vision with social responsibility, developing clean and renewable energy. We have 2 impressive hydroelectric dams, the Itaipu, which we share with Brazil, and Yacyretá, which we share with Argentina. This year, Itaipu Binational joined the global network of biospheric reserves of UNESCO with the admission of the Atlantic forest of the Alto Paraná. My mandate as President of the Republic reaches an end in 2018. This is my final speech before this plenary, and I would like to mention what we have been able to improve since 2013. We now have full democracy with division of powers, with unquestionable elections and the rule of law. We have given clear signals to the international community, both publicly and privately, on the improvement of our country as a receiver of investments, cooperation, and conventions. With regards to foreign relations and the role of Paraguay in the world, our interaction grew exponentially through visits received, invitations, and participations in international organizations. In the last 4 years, our country received official visits from His Holiness Pope Francisco, the former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, the Patriarch of the Russian Orthodox Church, His Holiness Kirill, and other top-ranking officials and heads of state who honored us with their presence in our country. Paraguay was unanimously accepted at the OECD's Development Center. Our membership of this very prestigious organization is an unequivocal sign of international recognition for the efforts and achievements of our government in our policy of good practices and institutional robustness. We can proclaim proudly that Paraguay is a member of the OECD, and that reaffirms the confidence of the international community in the significant reforms undertaken by our government. Today, we are members of the advisory committee of WIPO following years of mistrust towards our country with regards to respect for intellectual property. And we are now involved in more decision-making in more international bodies. Paraguay now goes beyond our own borders and all continents. Our priorities within the framework of the United Nations have been established within the Vienna Programme of Action for Landlocked Countries 2014-2024, part of Agenda 2030. And therefore, we urge states, especially our trading partners and transit countries, to take those duly into account. Regional integration has undeniable benefits, especially when we endeavor to reconcile the interests of all stakeholders. We are working, therefore, in Mercosur to give new impetus to economic and trade integration, whilst we also make progress in the social, employment, scientific, and cultural dimension of that bloc. That is a very, very positive agenda. President, Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development is the most ambitious intergovernmental task for development in the multilateral sphere. For the proper implementation of the National Development Plan 2030, we are establishing an innovative institutional architecture with great participation and committed to those aims and goals. I'm proud to mention that together with the President of Congress and the Supreme Court of Justice, we signed a joint declaration that acknowledges the commitment of Paraguay to Agenda 2030 with each of its goals. Paraguay is in favor of Agenda 2030 through our three powers, and that is unheard of in our region. Over the last 4 years, my government has responded to the desires of society based on justice and efficacy. When we came into government in August 2013, we established three main national policies: poverty reduction with social development, inclusive economic growth, and for Paraguay to take its place in the world. As we implemented these plans, we changed our culture, which in the past was linked to political cronyism and bad practices, to a model which is based on transparency and formality, with public access to information and greater opportunities for our people. Access to public information was unprecedented, and today we have instruments that give form to this political will, that what is public will be carried out in public. we can say that we are undergoing a process of transformation that was unheard of in our country. Although it has triggered some concerns, reactions, and resistance from those who felt more comfortable with the former model, I can guarantee that this transformation is closing the doors to negative policies such as corruption, which for a long time delayed the economic and social development of our country. President, despite regional economic problems, we have been able to achieve sustained economic growth, and we hope to continue to gain ground in establishing relations with the rest of the world as we are trustworthy and predictable. In recent years, economic growth in Paraguay has been constant, with an annual average of 5.2%, one of the highest in South America. Equally, we are reducing poverty. However, we are still facing serious challenges to eradicate it because of long years of neglect in the past. Our priorities have been focused on giving a strong impetus to social investment, especially in education, so that people who are poor can benefit from economic growth, and we will be able to reduce inequality. We are implementing flagship programs of social protection, such as Tecopora, with conditioned money transfers, school lunches, and food subsidies for the poorest. And we have a poverty reduction program called Sowing Opportunities. We are now granting more student scholarships and financial aid for poor young people, because we believe that if we educate our young people, that is the best investment for the future of our country. After 175 years, Paraguay once again is granting postgraduate scholarships for our students to study in the best universities in the world. This is a record investment of $42 million. And through the Carlos Antonio López scholarships, we have thousands of Paraguayan students studying in 50 of the 200 most prestigious universities in the world. Many of them are teachers, and 60% of them are women under the age of 30. The first 60 have already successfully concluded their studies and are now using their knowledge back home in Paraguay for the development and benefit of our country. Another national strategic goal to combat poverty is focusing on housing so that our citizens can have decent housing, we can relaunch the economy and create employment. Over these last 4 years, we have worked very hard with transparency and responsibility, and we have achieved unprecedented results. For the first time in the history of Paraguay, one single government, when it completes its term, will have delivered more than 30,000 social housing units. That's more than 10 times more than any other previous government. And this is even more valuable because it benefits thousands of families who for years were ignored by previous governments and who now have a decent home and access to better conditions for themselves. We are building hope and opportunities so that Paraguayan families from the poorest communities in our country, the industrial belts in our largest cities, indigenous regions, and rural villages can now make progress. We are changing and transforming our country in a transparent and efficient way, making the most of our resources, reducing costs and eliminating corruption, and boosting the quality of constructions through very strict oversight. Our government is encouraging productive development through responsible investments. We are granting priority to infrastructure to improve connectivity at national level as well as with our neighboring countries. Investment in infrastructure is notably the highest in decades, and we are building many new roads. We require responsibility and commitment from our leaders, and we have worked very hard to improve well-being in our country. Thanks to this new model of work in our government, we are managing to have a more efficient, progressive and honest country. President, the Republic of Paraguay reaffirms its commitment to international peace and security and the use of peaceful means to solve conflicts with reciprocal cooperation between states. In Paraguay, the prohibition of weapons of mass destruction is enshrined in our constitution. Therefore, our country welcomes the recent adoption of the Treaty of the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons and reaffirms its belief that nuclear disarmament should be transparent and irreversible, with effective verification mechanisms based on a universally and legally binding framework. Paraguay reiterates its condemnation of DPRK's nuclear test, which is a clear defiance and breach of its international obligations, and it is a new provocation to the international community. We expect the firm rejection of this General Assembly to this irrational attitude, which is an attack on global security and peace. The Republic of Paraguay expresses its serious concern regarding the scourge of terrorism, which we condemn in all its forms and manifestations. We reaffirm that combating terrorism should take place within the strict respect for international law through solid cooperation among states. We will continue working with peacekeeping operations under the auspices of the United Nations in the belief that this is the means to achieve the goals and aims of the Charter. Today, my country is providing military personnel, both women and men, for 6 peacekeeping operations, and we are investing in the training of our people at the training center for peacekeeping in the Sept, Paraguay. The Republic of Paraguay is also committed to the promotion and effective protection of human rights everywhere in the world. We truly believe that everyone, without discrimination, should be protected in their dignity and in their rights. We advocate that the Human Rights Council should continue to carry out its work with objectivity, impartiality, and universality. And in this context, I have to refer to an issue of concern in my region. The situation in Venezuela requires urgent attention. I reiterate my message of solidarity to the people of Venezuela, the victims of political persecution and human rights violations, in the hope that this brotherly nation will find, as soon as possible and within its sovereignty, a peaceful solution to the serious crisis and break with democracy it is currently facing. President, through international cooperation, the Republic of China, Taiwan, is committed to the cooperation programs linked to the Millennium Development Goals and the Sustainable Development Goals, supporting many countries, including Paraguay. Taiwan possesses relevant knowledge and experience and has been efficient in contributing to the international community. The government of the Republic of Paraguay once again urges all member states of this organization to identify the best way to facilitate the participation of Taiwan in UN mechanisms, meetings, and activities so that its 23 million inhabitants can exercise their responsibilities as global citizens and make concerted efforts to establish sustainable alliances with all countries. President, we are firmly convinced that the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, has started very important work at the head of the United Nations based on his experience as a man of state. This will be the starting point for a new era of the real universalization of the principles that govern the functioning of this organization, and for its programs and actions to reduce the huge inequalities that still exist among countries and regions. I'd like to reaffirm that my country will continue to grant high priority to its participation in United Nations debates, convinced of the importance of the work of the United Nations in building a more peaceful and fair world. We will continue to work resolutely towards development with true social inclusion, creating conditions for prosperity, always putting people first. And I would like to end my statement by quoting Pope Francis. Never let us forget that true power is service. Thank you.